Rolex might be the biggest players in the watch world, but they have made some terrible looking watches over the years, and wow, we don't like them. And we're not alone. Some of these watches will have you rolling your eyes and swiping right. So without further ado, because there's a lot to say and a lot that you might disagree with, here's our list of the ugliest Rolex watches ever made. So before we get into our rant, and by the way, that's what this is, let's discuss the criteria for today's video. We're only going to consider pieces that came straight from the Rolex factory with a face only a mother could love. So no horrible iced out versions that weren't purchased new. However, one-of-a-kind items will be considered if they were created and manufactured by Rolex in the same definitive form. Anyway, the point of today's video is to show that despite all the accolades Rolex receives, they still make mistakes every once in a while, and that such mistakes can actually cause physical distress, and we mean it. The very first one we must discuss is the Rolex Leopard Daytona. 2004 saw the beginning of a production for the Rolex Leopard Daytona. The dial and the bracelet both have a leopard print pattern, and it is crafted out of yellow gold. Now, when you take into account the stones that are set into the bezel as well as the end links, you are left with a glittering, excessive chaos that is difficult to manage. Despite the fact that we're not using a rigid ranking system, this one will always appear in first place. This gold 2004 Daytona is the same as any other, even down to the alleged Rolex caliber 4130 that is contained within it. The only differences are the decorations and complex designs. To tell you the truth, we have no recollection of who was supposed to get this Rolex watch, but it has achieved legendary status regardless of its quality. Next is the Rolex Yachtmaster 2. Just like the Yachtmaster, the Yachtmaster 2 is not the kind of watch that would spark a Mexican standoff. Outside of the Mediterranean and a few select locations in the United States, there isn't typically much interest in watches with themes related to yachting or regattas. We speculate that this is because yachting isn't as popular as it once was in most parts of the world. In fact, watches with these themes don't tend to generate much interest. The larger size of the Yachtmaster 2, which is 44mm, could be one factor that contributes to its undervaluation. But that's not the end of it. This watch had a ridiculously high price tag, which is primarily attributable to the proprietary ring command bezel. And we think it's expensive because when we compare it to the ordinary Rolexes made of stainless steel, we see that it's quite pricey for something that's so unattractive. Then we have the Rolex Pearl Master reference 81318. Even if you might want to kill us for saying this, we're going to go ahead and say it anyway. There is no possible world where the Pearl Master series could ever be considered an improvement over the Oyster Perpetual collections. According to Rolex's explanation, this marks the brand's maiden voyage into the world of jewellery watches, a category of timepieces in which aesthetics take precedence over functionality. It is reasonable to assume this, and it does not provide a reason for us to criticise them on their own. However, it also seems to be one of the most extensive model lines that the company has to offer, both in terms of the overall reference volume and the number of individual model revisions, 204 to be exact. It should come as no surprise that Rolex targets only female consumers with its Pearl Master collection, which features casings that measure only 34mm in diameter, as well as an abundance of gems and other forms of ornate decoration employed throughout. However, there are two factors that contribute to the unpleasant appearance. You may not agree with our assessment, but we place the bracelet at the top of the list. Because of the bracelet, we are led to believe that Rolex considered doing something amazing, but in the end, they decided against it. But let's be fair. In comparison to the Oyster, Jubilee, and President wristbands, we would like to acknowledge and appreciate its one-of-a-kind quality. However, the bracelet is annoying to us. It is. The second flaw is that the line makes too much of an effort to be feminine, as shown by the several models that have flowers engraved on the dials, without actually succeeding in keeping the elegance that Rolex dress watches are known for being known for. Although it is evident that the collection is not intended to appeal to everyone's aesthetic preferences, we are still at a loss to comprehend why someone would choose a Pearl Master over a Datejust or an Oyster Perpetual watch. Now let's talk about the Datejust reference 1262310025, because for the life of us, we just don't get it. It's likely that you can deduce why this specific date just doesn't go down well with us, but merely in case, C is the word that will help you figure it out. In spite of the fact that Rolex refers to the design of the dial as the discrete Jubilee theme, seriously people, discrete? It appears to be more at home in the Pearl Master series and makes it impossible for anyone with eye difficulties to tell the time. Does the colour of the dial fascinate you in any way? Naturally, it is fascinating, but the colour, which is a little issue, reminds us more of coffee than the brand's chocolate. Now, images probably won't do it justice, but the Rolex brand name is printed such a large number of times that it almost completely dominates the watch. To be sincere, we feel obliged to point out that the dial is decorated with an unsightly pattern similar to that found on several fancy bags, but we won't call any names today. Anyway, this watch is not it, despite the fact that we're certain that there is at least one person in the world who finds actual pleasure in this. We continue to maintain that it is ugly. Now, we move on to the Rolex Cellini, another timepiece on the Rolex ugly list. Here's the deal, folks. We could go on for hours about how terrible Rolex Cellini watches are. There are a lot of hideous Rolexes that were released under the Cellini line, and anyone who sees one is likely to assume it's a fake with the Rolex logo slapped on it. But many of these watches are actually real, and nobody knows anything about them because they're so ugly. The Rolex Cellini just looks like a really flashy roulette. And then we have the Rolex Daytona Rainbow. Now, some of you may disagree with us on this one, but we have to stand our ground. We don't like it. And we've tried hard, but we think it's not pretty. We get why you'd like this though. After all, this is the ultimate stunt watch, and you're only going to wear it when you want to pull one on everyone by virtue of the fact that you have so much money that nothing else matters. Anyway, we think this watch is a little too much. Up next is the GMT Master 2 Pepsi White Gold reference number 1260 719 BELRO Meteorite dial. Now, a quick funny story. When pictures of this were kind of leaked right before Baselroll 2019, everyone in the watch world thought Rolex won't actually release it. People were talking and ranting and all, saying that they didn't want this watch. However, the entire watch community was not against it, and people are fawning over this watch. But it is not a particularly attractive timepiece. One reason it is popular is because watch enthusiasts were glad Rolex was taking a chance on a novel design. So everyone, that was our little list and huge rant. Do you have your own list of ugly Rolex watches? You know, watches that probably shouldn't be sold? Let us know. We are curious.